At the moment, we're seeing a lot of different types of NFTs being dropped and sold on the Cardano ecosystem. We're seeing all these really big drops where they're selling 10,000 or so algorithmically generated images and unique NFTs, and they're all selling out, which is absolutely amazing. And we're also seeing unique artists building and creating their own things. So it's either a unique painting that they've done and they're selling as an NFT, or photography and other pieces that artists have created and selling it as NFTs as well. Jason Matias joins me on this interview to talk about his artwork and some of the stuff that he's created, how his career has progressed and how he got into the photography and art space and then slowly started evolving into NFTs as well. He talks a little bit about his experience in selling NFTs on different marketplaces, a little bit his real world art selling as well, and then talks about some couple of tips in regards to how other artists in the space that are just getting into it, how they can evolve and build themselves a community to be able to sell their artwork. All right. Now, if you like this type of content, please make sure you give us that thumbs up, click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll hear more from us really soon. But let's get into this interview. I'm joined in this interview with Jason, who is an artist with quite an interesting career. I've seen him quite active in the Cardano ecosystem at the moment, joining a lot of the Twitter spaces and reaching out to a lot of people, learning a little bit more and sharing some of his artwork, which looks absolutely fantastic. And when I looked into his career, he has quite a bit of a background in different places. So Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been seeing you in there in the rooms too. So it's cool to be able to see a face and to put it to the voice and have a more real conversation.
All right. So you probably get asked this all the time, but how on earth did you get into photography and your art career, especially when I know a little bit of your background working in the United States Air Force? How did that happen? How did you transition from one career to another and find your, I guess, passion where you are now?
Well, it wasn't a direct transition. You know, like you get out of the military and then you do something for a while and then you end up wherever you are. Because it doesn't seem to me that a lot of people can go straight into whatever their dream job is. I got out of the military. I got in one of those educations that I was supposed to get, and I couldn't get a job. So during that time in between getting out and finishing my master's, I was building a photo career. And I didn't even know it. Like I was trying to sell my work in order to pay for more gear. But what I realized that I was doing was making a small business. And I started to approach it as a small business instead of as a art career or whatever you want to call it. And that turned into a full-fledged art business. Because I got a master's, I had a pretty awesome resume, but I just couldn't get picked up by work. So it was an all or nothing for me for a while.
Okay, so you've gone and slowly transitioned into photography. So you're at the point in your life and career where you're trying to earn more money to buy more gear and get better and better at it. Like, how did you evolve your art career then and your photography from where you were? Like, how did you, I don't know, get so good? Like some of your pieces are absolutely stunning. It's like, I'm assuming it's a lot of practice, a lot of influence from other people. So like, how'd you get to this point?
I think that's two different questions. Like one question is, how did I make a business? And the other question is, how did I get good at photography? You get good by practice, right? Those 10,000 hours or what have you, but 10,000 hours spent on the right, on the right education. And I think that my particular little niche of editing or style of editing that's just a little bit different than most people's for my landscape photography comes because I spent all my time learning how to edit portraits, but being too afraid to take portraits for the beginning of my career. I just didn't think I was allowed. We were just in a spaces about feminine bodies and sexuality and taking those type of pictures. And I said the same thing. I don't I didn't for a long time think it was okay for me to try to shoot portraits with people, and then nonetheless nudes. So I put that same feeling into my landscapes as best I could. And at the same time, especially in like these last few years, I began focusing on the idea or the motif behind my work. So instead of going out to take a pretty picture, I'm trying to create around an idea. And in my landscapes, that idea is called comfortable isolation. And I think that focus of it no longer has to be a good landscape photograph, because in general, that's a pretty easy thing to do. It's just a simple composition and a touch of editing. But to shoot around an idea and to create a portfolio or body of work around an idea that generates a feeling in the people who are seeing it had required me to focus and be a lot more specific on what I shoot and how I shoot it. So, paying attention to those elements as I was growing up in photography. And I got here because I was reviewing work as I went, and I started noticing trends, and then I started jumping on those trends. Like, for instance, I have a Halloween collection coming out, right? That's spooky photos or fantasy photos. But if you look at them, they all center around themes that are now 7-10 years later super present or prevalent in my work, like isolation or duality. There's a piece called Duality that I made in 2014 or something like that, 2013, 2012, where it's a woman and she's got two dead personalities pulling out of herself, right? Like kind of ghosts, like spirits or whatever. And in the video for the behind the scenes, I talk about how that was from a dream and this idea of duality. But now, 7 years later or 8 years later, the collection I have called Aria is all based on dualities. All the stories are based on dualities, the compositions, the colors, all of that. And seeing those seeds and then focusing on what meant the most to me instead of just taking good pictures, I think got me to where I am now. And hopefully will continue pushing me forward.
Wow, sounds
the
amazing.
Business side, I stopped selling art. Like, I teach a business course for artists, right, called The Art Selling Art. And one of the things I talk about, I just finished 2 webinars yesterday, back-to-back webinars, Tuesday, Wednesday. And one of the first things I tell them when I'm going through this sort of education seminar is I got to where I am today because I stopped selling art. But I'm an artist, so what does that mean? So as soon as I'm done creating a piece, it stops becoming a piece of art and it becomes instead a product, right? And a product, I can define the qualities of the product and who its intended audience is, and then I can market to those people. And that's how I've made a living. I create a luxury product for an affluent audience. So I can package my product in a luxury fashion and then show it to the people who would appreciate that. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Wow.
Without being super viral on social media or anything like that, because I've never had any luck with that sort of thing. So it's always been marketing.
I have seen your online course that you've put together. I did look that up and I checked out what you've done, how you put it together, and the community that you've built around it as well. And just looking at some of the testimonials from the people that have been in your course, it looks quite amazing. And the process that you teach in regards to selling art, I guess, but you don't sell art, to your audience is quite cool. It's quite good. Like, how's that going? What is it all about exactly? What do you teach your audience, and how long have you been doing that for?
So Artist Selling Art is basically a case study on my own business, and I've taken what's worked and what worked for me, and then turned it into a learning module that will work for other people. And in addition to the the static videos that you can watch, we have this community, this members only group on Facebook where we have coaching calls and all of that stuff. And I think that's where most of the learning takes place, because we can have interactions that you just can't make in a static video. At least I'm not that good at it. And I started this thing in 2018, as a beta group, because all of my conversation always ended up on what is on business with other artists. Like, how are you selling your work, and why am I making it and you're not, and blah blah blah, right? Because people want to know, and it developed from there. So the beta group was like, okay, guys, I'm always having these conversations. Let's see if I actually have value to give, and created those videos. And then now, or created from there, it turned into a membership. So I'm going through a launch right now, or a doors open. I open the doors 2 or 3 times a year for new artists. So after this iteration, there might be 300-ish paid members. And I think it's going good. Like, I have members who have leveled up from 5 figures to 6 figures, and from nothing to 5 figures. So it's a process. And I think the key to success for everybody is really just putting in the time and the work, and giving up some of these ideas about artists, right? People have these ideas that they can't be tech savvy because they're not, or they can't sell stuff because selling is not what artists do, or blah, blah, blah. And they just have to let go of that stuff and start embracing the business side.
So you've gone from your physical art and your online courses, and now you're transitioning into NFTs. Well, I've seen on your profile that you've been on OpenSea and Rarible as well. So it looks like you have looked into the Ethereum space and try to sell your artwork through there. So you're transitioning over to selling NFTs in general. What has this process been like?
Except minus the whole community aspect of being able to talk to collectors and have all these spaces, conversations around the NFT art, it's pretty much the same as the physical world. You know, there's not a whole lot different from posting your work on OpenSea versus posting it on Etsy, right? It's just a marketplace where people can go buy, except for the fact that it sometimes costs you hundreds of freaking dollars because of gas. So being able to communicate directly and create more community is the real fun part, but it's also massively time consuming. And it's a trade-off. Like, from a business perspective, me spending my time doing all these conversations is money, right? Or I could pay for advertising, which is what I do for the physical world, right? Social media ads and Google, showing up on Google and stuff like that. That's me trading time and money. So I spend money over there and I spend time over here. I don't know. I think it's fun. I didn't have much success on OpenSea. There was also a large portion of time where I couldn't get on Spaces and Clubhouse just because of my personal life, and it was a pretty hard sell on my partner. You know, that I would be spending all this time talking to my phone instead of talking to her, and that held back my growth a huge amount, my ability to create connections with the right people during my ETH phase, because I just didn't show up. And if you don't show up, you're not going to make it. So I don't know if that was your question or not, but that's the tangent I'm on. I go on a lot of tangents. I'm sorry. But my experience is, right now, like, in terms of earnings, they're about the same. At this point, I have Art Basel, which is a major physical show at the end of the year. And we'll see at the end of the year whether or not NFTs were more profitable for me than being in the physical world. But I think obviously it's a great place to be as an artist and to create some earning and some income with your work.
It's interesting because I see the NFT space, or anything digital, it can be scaled, and you can sell a lot more on a bigger mass market than you can in the physical world. So, like, I've always gone down the path of, like, myself. I run training courses for people that build websites and online content management systems and whatnot. So I've always found the ebooks and the resources that went around it were a lot easier to sell, and you could scale that up a lot more, because, you write the ebook once and then you just sell it a couple of million times. Well, not million times for me, but you know what I mean. So that's how I see the NFT space as well. Like, you'd sell a lot more of it, but you're trying to create some rarity and scarcity in there as well. But at least it's somewhat scalable in a way. Not so much the community aspects though, in building a profile though.
I'm not sure how scalable NFTs are. It depends on, if you do a 10,000 NFT project or if you do one of ones, because eventually, one of one, there's only one piece. So you're not scaling that. And you're still, as an artist, I don't know. I don't know if it's a scalable, it's just another market to participate in. But selling digital products is definitely, so a digital product is a product that you can sell over and over again, right? But an NFT is not. An NFT is a single it's non-fungible, so you can't create more of them, which would therefore limit scalability. But you can create more and go straight to market, as opposed to with the physical world where there's that in-between part where you have to produce the artwork somehow. And it depends on the type of artist you are. Like if you can do editions of 50 and sell your work, then great. Then you just created some sort of limited scalability with your work. Yeah, I don't think scalable is the right word. It's a multiplier for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So from here, you've worked in multiple different spaces. So I've watched your, not watched, but I've seen your profile on OpenSea, Rarible, and you've also been highlighted on Binance.
Foundation, Binance, yeah, all of these places.
Yeah. So what's your experience between all of those different spaces? Like what's been better out of all of them?
I think there's each one of the blockchains has its own community culture. And I would say Ethereum is a lot more me, and Binance is super quiet. Like I never found a Binance community on Twitter to connect with. And then the Cardano community seems to be much more family focused, like more of a communal tribal sense as opposed to a competitive tribal sense, which is what I think the difference between ETH and Cardano is altogether. And that's just, it's also smaller at the moment, but I think that just this mentality, I hope it stays this way. And maybe Ethereum was at the beginning, because I started in February. Like I started right away in the beginning, and that was all Clubhouse, and those communities seemed at first to be quite like the Cardano one, but changed very quickly. And that might just be the toxicity of money going in, and then competition for it. But I don't know. I think there's just a different ethos in Cardano. So hopefully it doesn't evolve into that.
Okay. I'm guessing that's why you're settling on Cardano at the moment and why you're focusing so much of your time and energy in the space.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. The other reasons is that I've been a bag holder since 2017. So it just makes sense for me to be here in Cardano. And I've always liked the idea of the project, of something that started with the end in mind, instead of starting, like, it seems like Ether just started with how can we get money right away. And that, I think that mentality again pervades all of Cardano and how people communicate and the way we look at the future.
So you mentioned that you were a bag holder since 2017. Like, how did you get into crypto then? And how did you discover Cardano?
So I'm a failed day trader.
All right. Okay. Aren't we all?
So I'm a failed day trader. I learned early on in investing that investing was easy. That was my first big mistakes, because I started investing in 2008. I was in Afghanistan. I was making all of this money as a staff sergeant with no bills to pay, because you're in Afghanistan, you don't pay for anything. So I started investing at the bottom of the 2008-9 crash, and learned that investing was easy. Had this, what I felt was like a lot of money at the time. And when I got out of the military, I spent a year day trading. I spent like my last year in the military and my first year out day trading. And I picked the wrong mentor, but I was also, I picked a trading style, or I picked a company and a trading style that didn't suit me. And it didn't suit my mentality. I didn't know it. I was just trying to force myself to trade that way. And I lost a lot. And I guess I lost everything. But I learned a lot of lessons. So I call that my market tuition, you know, and my market, tuition, whatever, the money you spend in college. But I wasn't able to get back in. And then when 2017 rolled around and there was this boom happening and all this interest jumping in, I discovered Cardano because of news, right? I think it was top 3 at the time. And it was a low price. So I was like, okay, I'll put money here and I'll put money in a bunch of other places. And I got in on the up and didn't get out in time on the down. So I've been averaging in, because crypto made sense to me, since 2017 on a bunch of different platforms. So fast forward to now, NFTs come out. I see it as a way to sell my work in another place, and to grow like a different branch of my art career. Because one of the reasons I got out of the military is because I saw this sort of railroad track of where my career was going, and that was it. It was set. And that's not so much fixed in the art world. There's a lot of places to be derailed, and there's a lot of different directions you can go. But it seemed like this was all I was going to do from now on. But then crypto started, or NFT started, and it's like, oh, I can do this other thing too. And I can have these two different, somewhat parallel tracks leading me forward in the future, but also giving me more variety. So being in NFTs is kind of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so that completely makes a lot more sense now as well. And I guess that's what opened you up to NFTs too, because a lot of artists that I do speak to, they're still in the physical world and they haven't really jumped onto the NFT space. Well, especially here in Australia, it's not that many people have. So it's interesting that you got in early and you had a different type of mindset. I guess you were also looking into investing and trading before your photography and art career started as well. So that gave you
my dream used to be a day trader. I wanted to be a day trader who could make at least $700 a day.
Yeah,
and then I would travel and take pictures. Right. So now I'm a photographer who invests. Like it just flipped, but it's still kind of the same.
Okay. Where has your photography taken you? Like some of the images that you've taken are, from all over the place. So what's some of the most interesting places that you've been to?
Oh man. So I think one of the most interesting places that I like the most and would go back to for photography is Morocco. I felt like that place has so much to offer in terms of just straight character. The amount of character in the landscape, in the people, and in the coastline. Like there's just all of this dynamism in Morocco. But I've been to the Philippines, Italy, Spain, Morocco. I'm in the US, so I don't know if Mexico counts and Canada counts, but I've also been to Bali and Thailand. So I haven't been everywhere yet, but there's like, I think in April, I have a trip scheduled for Iceland, and I might even go earlier than that. And then art shows have taken me around the country too. So a lot of places, but not everywhere. And there's a lot of people who have been a lot more places than me. And not even for photography, just for themselves.
So in terms of the NFT space and specifically Cardano, what are your top tips for anyone else that is starting out in this space wanting to sell their NFTs on Cardano?
Community first. That's everything, because I feel like the NFT space is like the rest of the world, but like on steroids or accelerated, or however you can, I can't think of the word right now. But get in and find a way to provide value for everybody. And then you can you'll start seeing the attention coming back to you. Because in terms of sales, like everything is attention based, real world or NFT world. And the goal is to get attention from the right people and hold it so that you can sell your work. Okay. Now that sounds almost manipulative, right? When you talk about it that way. And it's only a manipulation if your intent doesn't have any genuineness behind it, right? So I have something to offer, right? I can offer education and I can offer my perspectives on the world and how things are going and whatever, and I can just be part of the conversation. And that's all I'm really saying. Just join the conversation, be part of the conversation. Don't be a wallflower. You're not going to make it if you are just hiding on the outskirts. Your artwork would have to be significantly more attractive if you want to hide, right? So there's like a correlation, and you say I have really good work, and thank you. I appreciate the compliments, but I feel like you have art and the context that goes with your art, and there's just something about the virality of your work versus the amount of value you can put in the world and on how high you can reach, right? So people who can create super valuable or super viral work don't have to be as vocal, don't have to be as much a part of the marketing as the people who do. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like there's a way to look at what I'm saying and be like, oh, well, this is just, there's a way to be disingenuine about doing what I'm saying. And then there's a way to be a genuine, valuable part of the community. And it's up to you and how you do it in order to become, you can tell the people who are out there and are disingenuine, There was a guy we created we had like this friend group and you could tell like the way he was like, hey guys, can you retweet my stuff and please leave a quote tweet if you can. And he would say that and like direct people on how he wanted. And of course you put people in a position where you're talking to them and they're part of the conversation, then they kind of have to do what it is you want to do, but it never really felt genuine to me. And you can tell, so how, you have to figure out who your persona is and be out there sharing it.
Right. That's your number one tip? Do you have any other tips to share, or is community and reaching out with the people being seen the one and only big tip?
Shoot. I mean, I feel like it's hard to go past that, because obviously your work has to be thought out and done well. But I might be a little bit jaded because in my opinion, it's popularity over talent in terms of success in business. So being visible is just hyper important. There's artists that you'll find out there and you'll be like, wow, your work is incredible. How come you're not selling? And it's because they're not being part of the community and nothing else, right? So yeah, I'm hyper focusing on that right now. Everything else is kind of the same. So like the same advice I would give to someone in the physical world. Know why you create your work. There's a ton of artists who I find who can create something pretty, but has no reason for creating something pretty. It's just that they can put the elements together and it looks good. And having a story that gives context to your work can elevate the experience of your work, tenfold. And there's tons of research that shows millennial buyers are as interested or more interested in the artist than they are the work themselves. So when they're buying work, and this is a study on physical work, they're buying it because they like who created it. So the story, the context, and your growth as a person is as important to the work as the work itself. I feel like I see some of that in the NFT world, but the fact that the NFTs are built on assets and we're talking about tradable financial securities, is overshadows that a lot of the time. So do the work, and part of doing that is doing a lot of self work and working on who you are and what kind of and what are your driving motivations are. So it's doing the work to figure out your why is also part of personal growth. So it's hard, right? It's not, that makes it hard, that it's not easy, but if you do it, you get to grow in multiple dimensions, both with your art and as a person. So there's that. And the other thing that I always tell people in the physical, in my courses, is that learn to love the work. Right. So because we start with an idea, and then we have this like beautiful end project and artwork in mind, but in between is the doldrums, right? It's the flat sea with no wind, or just crossing the moraine before you get to the glacier, and it's no fun. And a lot of people in the middle here, they say they lack inspiration, but it's not inspiration that they lack, because the inspiration started here with the end in mind. But what they really are missing in the middle is motivation, because they don't know how to celebrate the work. So if you can learn to love the middle part, the getting through the tough and the making, so that you have something created at the end, then you'll be able to keep pushing through all the parts of your career. And we all have trouble with it. I have trouble with it. So it's something we all struggle with.
Fantastic. I think those three are actually really brilliant tips for any other artists out there that's struggling in the space or wanting to get more exposure. So thank you so much for that. In terms of later on, when you sell your art with smart contracts, have you thought about how you're going to price your work? Are you still going to charge a fee of some sort? Or would you go possibly zero fee and work on the royalties? Like, have you thought about that?
What do you mean by zero fee?
Oh, well, some people have been thinking about selling their NFTs or doing NFT drops for free, but taking in all of the, not all of, but 10% royalties when on secondary markets. So they'll make absolutely no ADA in the beginning of selling the NFTs, but make it all on the secondary markets.
I think that's asinine. I mean, if you have a 10% royalty and let's say you want to make $1,000 or 250 ADA, right? When it hits three plus, but how many secondary sales would you need to make that initial ask for your art? As a fine artist, most of your collectors are going to be end buyers, end consumers, people who are buying your work for the utility of simply enjoying it. So with that in mind, you're looking at making nothing on top of nothing, right? I think the precedent is already set that you sell your work for your asking price and you put the royalty in. That's already set on every other blockchain. So to do a zero cost drop with the fantasy of becoming an actively traded asset, it might work for the 10,000 drops, for the PFP drops and the big ones that people trade for some reason, but it's never going to work for an individual artist. Even when Beeple did his drop, it was still like $1, right? So he sold like 1,000 pieces for $1. So he still made $1,000, and then they traded up, and he got all those royalties. Because I remember seeing early on that the piece he sold for $1 or $10 or something like that was trading for 125,000. Okay. I guess one of the factors into doing something like that is how big is your audience. If you're coming in with hundreds of thousands or millions of people already knowing about you and wanting to trade, then maybe you could pull off a stunt like that. But no, there's always going to be a value attached to my NFTs. And then when smart contracts come out, then there'll also be a royalty. But like I said, I don't expect secondary sales to be a major part of my career, unless I can come up with something that can go viral like that.
Okay.
Like my book, for instance. If I drop my book, but still the book is going to have, it's going to be like 5 ADA or something. which would be about the same cost as it is in the real world. You just get the NFT. So I don't know. I've never heard anyone say that, but I think it's a horrible idea.
It's interesting. I have heard other people say it, but not specifically for art, like what you do. It's more for the NFT drops and some of these secondary markets, like the volume, daily trading volume at the moment. Like some of them you see like 1 million ADA being traded off these different NFTs on a particular day. So, 10% of that million is quite a lot for one single day.
Yeah, but they also sold out.
Yes,
so why would
correct,
you sacrifice why would you sacrifice that initial sale? That doesn't make sense from a business perspective.
Yeah.
The person who does that, the first person who does that successfully will be a stunt, and everyone else will fail at it. Almost guaranteed. There'll be a few projects that do this successfully, and the rest will try it to sort of piggyback on the idea, and they won't make a dime, or they'll make very little. But to some of these people doing these projects, it's like 10 minutes of work anyway, to create to take someone else's algorithmic program, put in your own data points, and then have it spit out 1,000 products to sell. So I guess the risk for a lot of people is not very much.
Do you see the Cardano NFT space getting as big as Ethereum? Like some of the prices of some of these NFTs that are being sold on Ethereum are, astronomical. Do you see that coming to Cardano?
That's already here. There's Space Buds selling for hundreds of thousands, berries selling for, upwards of $150,000. So whatever that is in ADA, 50, 60,000 ADA, 20, 30 ETH, or 40, 50, 60 ETH, that's already happening on Cardano. So yeah, I don't see it getting any smaller. I'm pricing my work comparable across the spectrum.
Yeah.
So like I have a piece on auction right now that I started at 750 ADA, which is half an ETH, which is what I'm charging, starting my auctions for, or starting my bidding price on some of my work on the other side. If I bring my Aria collection over, they're starting at 5,000 ADA, which is comparable to the 5 ETH on the other side. So I think that, I think the volume and the price action is going to come. There's plenty of people who are still huge bag holders, because Cardano was 3 cents 2 years ago. Those people are here. They just haven't purchased the work yet, and they're just not in the NFT section yet. So
I know a lot of huge bag holders that won't even touch their bags because tax implications, all sorts of different things, and it's just too much of a headache to break those big holdings open to actually deal and start trading, or even just buying NFTs. So it's quite interesting, some of the mindsets of some of these really big holders as well.
Yeah,
not much we can.
I think that it's going to come. It'll be here, especially when the ETH people start paying attention and they have already got their bags, and it'll be an easy conversion.
Now, last but not least, where can people find out more about you and see some of your art?
Oh man, all the places, right? So I'm real Jason Matias on Instagram and Twitter. And there's a Discord link in my bio and a link tree in the bio too, which will take you to the Cardano work and everything else. And that's the beginning of the rabbit hole, right? I think if you're a collector trying to see all my work in one place, my Discord has a downloadable catalog that it's a PDF with links and story. It's all in one little spot for you to consume. And I'm always open for a chat. So just DM me.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay, I'll put some of those links into the show notes for this episode as well, so people can check them out, find them there. And Jason, this has been brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hopefully you found this interview quite interesting, and there's some little tidbits there that you could probably take away. I put links down below to Jason's website where you can find out a little bit more about him and all of his art pieces as well. You can see all of his photography that he's done. Let us know which one is your favorite. I'd love to know what you think about his artwork and what you think about his photography in general. Now, like I said, if you really enjoy this content, please make sure you give us that thumbs up, click subscribe, hit the notification bell, work that YouTube algorithm for us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating.